To help you get a better grasp of the big picture of Nofap, I have prepared a typical Nofap path on a map. And with the help of this example, you should be able to tell what you did good or bad until now, and what to expect in the future. Further, it might even be possible to avoid some of the more common pitfalls when you already know what lies ahead of you. But without further ado, let's dig into the illustration I prepared. What we see here is more or less the map of Nofap. Well, most people will start on the bottom left of the map with an initial experience. Once you had it, for example, an experience of porn-induced erectile dysfunction when you tried to engage with a sexual partner, you are typically very startled and will try to find a solution to your problems in the near future and will search for solutions with a lot of rigor or vigor. Well, and the first thing that comes to mind is not necessarily Nofap, since you do not know about it. But many people will discover things like a death grip syndrome, which is pretty much just a very, rough form of masturbation, and people suspect that they numbed their senses by wanking it too hard. Well, but it turns out that is very likely not the problem, and the problems persist. Thus, they discover Nofap and they try to start on their Nofap journey. But they aren't very educated on the topic yet, and thus they still do things like consuming pornography and engaging in edging, for example. But since they did not get rid of the root problem, namely the pornography, they will just relapse. Well, after that, they will try to seek for additional solutions, and they will discover that edging is pretty much still considered fapping, so they try something else. After all, the human brain has a great capacity for rationalization, and people really want to keep doing what they already did, and this is PMO pretty much. Thus, they continue on a bad path. They still consume pornography even though they might have stopped the edging, which will also lead to a relapse. Well, after that, they might figure things out and try to get accountability buddies on sites like Reddit's Nofap, for example, or in Discord in general. So they learn a bit more from other people and maybe start lifting to distract themselves from their PMO. The less time, after all, you spend in front of a screen, the less chances you have to engage in PMO. And after that, they might even get a respectable streak going and enter the flatline territory. Well, the problem with the flatline territory is that many people think that their sexual organs stop working and thus they try to test. Thus, they engage in pornography again and relapse again. Well, but they learned a few things and continue on their path and maybe even reach day 30. And after day 30, things are usually a lot more smooth and they even go to day 60. Well, but what lies ahead? Maybe even 90 days, which is considered the relapse proof territory. After that, your first reboot, as it is called on Reddit, is finished. Well, but even after 90 days, there are still days to come, and maybe you have a lot of friends that are still engaged in PMO, and thus you will very likely relapse, even after 90 successful days. Well, but what happens then? Most people enter the so-called dark night stage, and this is a stage you can stay in for years or even decades. Most of the symptoms are gone since you already rebooted your brain to a degree and reached the 90-day threshold and likely aren't engaging too heavily in pornography anymore. But pornography is still lingering in your subconscious and you consume it from time to time, and thus you aren't really fully over it. Well, the only thing I know of that helps at that point is picking up habits like meditation and cultivating really deep insight into the damage that porn can do. The problem is if you rely on things like fear or willpower or discipline, is that you might discover that, well, the consequences aren't that grave after all, or it is not something that you should fear, and thus you will relapse. But with meditation or insight in general, that won't happen. And you might even be able to reach thresholds like 1 year of porn freedom. And after that, many people will actually make it forever and quit porn for good. Well, and this here, what you see, is a typical Nofap path on the map that spans over the course of multiple years, sadly. Okay, but let's now come to a summary. What have we learned today? Well, while every person's progress is a bit different, the overall path, in general, is remarkably similar. Everyone starts more or less at the same point, aka everyone knows more or less nothing about the whole Nofap business. And everyone uses a variation of the very same rationalizations at the beginning to give in to their addiction and to rationalize things like edging and consuming pornography in general, even without masturbation. And after getting their first reboot done, most people never actually leave the dark night stage and are content with less symptoms overall, but cruise while still being addicted to porn inside to some degree. And only very few get over their addiction forever. Try to avoid the typical mistakes I displayed here. Now you know at least some of them in advance. And maybe you are even one of the few that can quit the dark night of Nofap and actually quit porn forever. Okay, and that's pretty much it for today. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to leave a like and maybe subscribe to the YouTube channel. And if you feel like I missed something, feel free to let me know in the comment section so that other people can benefit from your wisdom. But until then, I wish you a pleasant day and goodbye.